it is very fashionable these days to discuss about the demise of the US dollar and speculating as to which country currency or probably some cryptocurrency would take the place of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. In a way, yes, the bitter truth is that the US has been found either provoking or supporting wars in countries who have tried to find an alternative too fast, too soon. However, as per the IMF data, there is little evidence that the central banks of the world will move to any other currency from the US currency very soon. There are certain data points which are suggesting that the banks are actively divesting from the US dollar, but it's happening at a very, very slow pace. On one hand, it does indeed look like dollar as a reserve currency is on a structural decline, but the decline is very, very slow. It is, in fact, the speed is so slow that we will probably not see any material impact or a material change in our lifetimes. Now, let's consider this data. Over the last 25 years, the US dollar share of the global central bank reserve. Now, this is again IMF data. All the total of the US dollar reserves of all the central banks combined, it was 71% last year, which has declined, not last year, I think, 10 years back, which has declined to 59%. Meanwhile, the allocations to euro and Japanese yen have remained largely the same at around 20% and 6% respectively. So from 71 to 59%, this decline has taken place in the US dollar. So where did the money go to? Now, the most probable answer or the most obvious answer is the Chinese RMB or the Yuan, and that is true to a very small extent. The global reserve allocation to the Yuan, the Chinese Yuan, has increased from 0 to a mere 2%. The increase in allocations have spread across the Chinese RMB, pound sterling, the Australian dollar, and Canadian dollar, and also a bunch of other emerging market currencies, which also includes India. Now, this decline is so very slow that it is not creating a substantial impact on the data point or our investment strategy. All the international sanctions or other geopolitical variables, which you can count the wars and you can count all the other stuff, did not have any significant influence on the central bank currency holdings. Countries which are politically more closely aligned with the UK, Europe, and the US, they will tend to hold the dollar more dearer as compared to the other currencies. But at the same time, countries which are in fact enemies of the US also hold dollars. The central banks are also holding US dollars of those countries which are enemies. Now, this is because the central banks are very conservative, they are very slow in their approach and very structural in their approach. This is surprising, but this is true. The true drivers of currency holding across the global central banks, there are a few. There are trade relationships of countries with each other. So how is one country trading with the other? How often and how large is that relationship of trade between each other? Considering US as the global safe haven currency, another big reason is the size of the capital markets of that particular country. Not only the size, also the liquidity of the capital market in that particular country, coupled with the capital flow restrictions which the central banks or the legislators might have imposed. So the greater the capital market size, the greater the liquidity and lesser the restrictions, the better it is in terms of the central banks deciding to have diverse currencies. Now, this is the very reason why the Chinese yuan has not captured a lot of global reserve portfolio. The Chinese local financial market is simply too illiquid and too opaque. The capital flow restrictions are too large, which makes it impossible for foreign central banks to hold any meaningful quantities of the Chinese yuan, as much as they would like to. This is the precise reason why I relish when I see that there were 298 IPOs filed in Indian markets since April 2024 and they got oversubscribed. This all creates additional structural liquidity in our markets, which is very, very good for us, for our investment, for our local currency, for the Indian rupee against the US dollar. This is another reason why I feel that we should not worry about the decline of the US dollar as the global reserve currency, which will surely happen, but will happen in the next 20, 30, or maybe 40 years, which will be good enough not to worry about this problem, at least in our lifetimes.